We are excited to be announcing our newest presenter sponsor, Pizant Building Products. Pizant Building Products has been providing contractors and builders with the supplies necessary to complete their jobs since 1964. They've built a reputation on honest, helpful, and quality service, serving the HRM for the last 58 years. Now with 7 locations in the HRM and 1 in New Brunswick. We look forward to having Pizant Building Products on the podcast in the near future. Okay, welcome back to the Atlantic Construction Podcast. Today we have Inflector Environmental Services with us, and we have Vice President Dan Chisholm and Director of Projects Justin Merritt. Thanks for doing this, guys, and thanks for being with us.
Great to be on.
Yeah. We usually start and just get a little idea of your kind of backstory in the industry and sort of how you arrived at the position you're in, and maybe a little bit about your education and background in the construction industry. So maybe Dan, start with you and just tell us a little bit about the history of how your career progressed.
Yeah, career-wise, I started with PCL as a student. I was going to St. Mary's University and NSCC at the same time. I was doing a
Bachelor of Commerce. Yeah.
Bachelor of Commerce and the Construction Management Tech program. Got on as a student and did 3 terms back to back. I was doing that. And
so this would have been
2009,
right,
2010, 2011, so right in that window. Graduated and then actually moved out to Regina, Saskatchewan with PCL.
Okay.
So went out there for the Rough Riders football stadium.
No way.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool project. Very cool.
It's pretty cool, especially for your first one at a school.
It was intense. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, so stayed out there for 4 or 5 years and then came back, worked in the local market for a few and 20
did you get to catch a game before you?
Quite a few. Yeah, we did like all the startup games and
been to some Eskimos games when I was in Edmonton, and man, I'm sure the crowds are good in Saskatchewan.
They're wild fans. Like they're very wild fans.
Yeah.
They're very into
religion there.
It is religion there. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
I cut you off, sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Little tangent.
Yeah, little tangent. No, I actually caught the game here as well this summer. They did the Atlantic touchdown.
Right.
In Acadia University, so that was exciting.
Okay.
To watch that. So.
Yeah, because they were going to have one of those at St. Mary's campus prior to pre-pandemic, and then they.
They moved it down. I'm not sure. Yeah, so somebody
could be wrong.
Somebody hit me up and was like, "Hey, I got tickets," and down I went. So.
Definitely.
Yeah, got the rider pride going. So.
Who won? Did they win?
No, they didn't. No, they lost. Yeah. So after that, came back and joined Inflector in 2019.
Nice.
Started as the operations manager and did that for 2 years, and then got moved up to be the VP and area manager.
Right. How about yourself, Justin? Long backstory with Envirobate and lots of years in the industry in this regard.
Yeah. No secondary schooling, but just finished grade 12. Went full time as a dairy farmer for a few years. And 2011, I moved to the city with my girlfriend at the time.
From where?
From Pictou County.
Okay.
And got on as a laborer with Envirobate. And ever since then, just haven't stopped and pushed my way through the reins and went up to a supervisor and then did operations manager for 6 years. Uh-huh. And now we are here joining Inflector. So,
yeah. And Envirobate, similar to Inflector, like a multi-service environmental contractor is abatement, meaning whether it's asbestos, whether it's lead, whether it's any number of items that need to be removed from the building, along with demolition. These are the services that you're providing and working on, right?
Specialized Envirobate specialized a lot in concrete cutting as well. So,
okay,
yeah.
So typically, for most of the projects that you're working on here in Atlantic Canada. For the abatement side, is it mostly asbestos? Is it mold? Is it both? Is it lead? Is it I'm sure it's different with different kinds of buildings, whether it's industrial or institutional, or commercial. But
it's a mix. Most of the hazmat that you see is asbestos.
Right.
And sometimes it comes up when the job's tendered if they've got a really good hazmat report, and other times you get in there and get ready to do demo and look at it and say, hey, that looks about the right vintage, and 60s, 70s, get it tested, and ends up being that. So
I think asbestos is one of those topics that a lot of people in the industry, obviously, you hear the term a lot, you hear it thrown around. You've been involved in jobs where, it might be asbestos here. Got to wait for the environmental contractor to come in, get some tests done, send it to the lab, etc. But can you guys give us a little asbestos 101 rundown, just for it's more common than maybe some people think, and
absolutely,
take us through a 5-minute.
It was the king of building materials in the 50s, 60s,
really
and
was,
70s. It was.
Yeah.
It was the miracle building material, right? It was tensile strength. It was sound resistant. It was mold resistant, and of course, it was fireproofing. And the manufacturers put it into everything. They put it into fireproofing, plaster, flooring, drywall joint compound.
Because similar to gypsum, which is in drywall, it's naturally fire rated. The material has a lot of ingredient, aspects of the ingredients within it that make it valuable to have in a building. It's just prior to understanding the health effects, of course. But
it's interesting, right? I didn't really realize when I was getting into it just how many materials it was in, right? So
it's kind of like when you realize petroleum is how much it's in every product that you put your hands on. It's in these bottles we're drinking water out of. It's in. And asbestos is kind of similar in that.
That's where they were headed with it, yeah.
So. And it was in the, in the automotive industry too, is a good example, disc brakes or pads and stuff on your car. So they would put asbestos fibers in those too, so make them last a little longer, heat resistant. Mm-hmm. So it's not just in the building industry, but
right, it's not just in the building industry. Yeah. So maybe, it's kind of. I think well known at this point and recent, the acquisition of Envirobate. Obviously, you had yourself, Dan, with as vice president since 2018. Is that right? Or was 2018 when Envirobate started to carry out work in Atlantic Canada?
So Inflector started in Atlantic Canada in 2018, Dartmouth General Hospital. And 2019 I came on and I assumed the role of VP area manager in 2020, early 2020. So
and your CEO is from this area, from Ottawa. Lived here. You knew him. He went to university here, and then grew the business in Ottawa. Succeeded his father, and then
correct.
Big step to be back.
So
carrying out work in Atlantic Canada because he spent a lot of his life here.
For sure, yeah. So their family, both his father and his mother, are from here. Yes. Jeff was born here, and they moved the family out to Ottawa, and that's where the business started. And when Jeff took over and there was an opportunity to launch the region out here, I think it was very special to him and exciting. So that's kind of how it got the start. And
so one big job in Dartmouth General to get the ball rolling.
That was the anchor, right? Correct.
Yeah. And you were present for that project.
I came on the tail end of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So right when it was getting really
just in time.
Just in time. Yeah. That was a great project.
I'm sure it was. Yeah.
For a lot of trades and in the community as well.
Can you speak on that project at all? It's just you were there at the end.
Yeah. It was massive. It was it was a demo of clean building materials and they refitted all the operating rooms. They put a big expansion on and then did a renovation in the main hospital. But there was a large abatement portion to it and a large selective demo portion to it. So a lot of really good trades involved with it. So it's a good project all around.
Amazing. Yeah, and so with the recent acquisition of Envirobate, I just think it's neat that Justin's been with Inflector for a couple of months now since that time, and you're got an Envirobate employee and a Inflector, and just without getting into the the corporate side, of course, or anything, but just maybe a little bit about your personal experience when a company merges. Obviously, there's a lot of mixed emotions on maybe both sides, especially worrying about job security and for the ownership and entrepreneurs. It can be maybe definitely an emotional time, but also looking at when a company like Envirobate's been around for 50 years and to see all that hard work carry forward in some regard with a lot of the same team joining with another and just seeing the fruits of your hard work kind of continue. But what's it been like for you, Justin, as an Envirobate employee, maybe just tell us a little bit about what it's been like for you over the past 6 months.
Well, I mean, when I was first told, I'll be honest, it was shocking. A lot of emotions, a lot of mixed emotions, like you said, was going. Wheels were spinning. What was going to happen? I was quite worried at first, like you said, job security, what's going to happen with me. But then once I sat down and met Dan and the crew and stuff, they made me feel warm inside and that everything was going to be okay. And so far, I love it. So it's really good.
Like when you say it was probably like a level of fear at first.
There was, yeah.
And even probably like anger, like, what the hell? Like, why does this have to happen? Like,
yeah,
who the hell are these people?
Not so much anger. I work alongside with the owners of Envirobate, the former owners of Envirobate, Carl and Rob, and we work hand in hand, day in and day out for the past 6 years. They're my mentors. They taught me a lot about the industry and a lot about managing guys and estimating, and they're very experienced people. So I was very proud of them too, to do what they had to do or what they chose to do. Mm-hmm. So nobody wants to work for the rest of their life. So it's good on them though for what they did.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, Envirobate has and had such an excellent reputation for years, right? Like they're the primo demo and abatement contractor, especially when I started out in the industry. Sure. That was always Canada. That was always my perception anyway. And when it was,
it seemed like they were on every job,
right? And when I was told, we were in negotiations, I was like, sweet, right? I was pumped when that's who I heard it was, and. Mm-hmm. It's exciting, and definitely want to really thank Rob and Carl for putting trust in us to, with that great business that they built. And it is like handing over a child or a baby, that they've been so tied to it and involved with it. And they're still still on and they're very involved in the day to day. And, for me, it's great to get that mentorship as well.
Yeah. And just to clarify, like what I meant and what I was leading into is like, it's so the perspective that you look at it, right? It's like that's a victory for them probably in a lot of ways. Although there's that detachment factor where it's like, you have to go through that emotional curve. But I was going to ask you as well, Justin, like for you in the being in the work environment, maybe hearing the conversations that were going on. There's that maybe anger and then the fear element. And did you personally have to like say to yourself, well, you know what, like. I'm just going to go talk to this Dan guy and just see what he's like. And like, did you have to kind of switch your attitude towards it? Or was there a moment when you kind of just felt like, I'm just trying to get some context of like your personal experience of it?
I didn't have any negative opinions towards the whole sale or decision that was made. Very optimistic person. So I try to look at the good things of it all. So, I was nervous more than anything, just nervous. I didn't know.
Like your first day of work nervous.
Yeah, I'm basically... I'm voluntold to start a new career is kind of what's happening.
That's what I'm getting at. Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I was settled in. Like I said, I've been at Envirobate since 2011. It's now 2022, so a lot of time put in. I'm someone that gets comfortable and work hard for the people that, support me too. So for that kind of change to happen all at once and so sudden, that was the biggest shocker of it all. Mm-hmm. But then, like I say, like once I met the crew that I was going to join on with, it all just leveled me out and made me feel a lot better about what was happening. So,
I think it's interesting to hear, your experience of that, because it's something that a lot of people go through. It might not be an acquisition or a merger, but everybody knows what it's like when a company's going through a generational shift or, new management in any regard, or just changes internally, especially like within the leadership. And I think the one thing you're thinking about is like, well, I've got all this experience. I've built these relationships. Like I have a really good relationship with my bosses. Are these, is this just people going to come in and, some guy, you're thinking in your head that's half my age, or some guy with, a degree, but not as much experience, what's going to happen to me, and am I going to be appreciated or whatnot? And it's just like that level of comfortability you get to when there's lots of retention is out the window. So it's an emotional time for a lot of people.
Yeah, big
absolutely.
Time.
Yeah.
On your end, Dan, like as far as I think probably maybe one of the most important things is the culture. Like, do they match? Or the people think the same? The core values, because every team has its own aura, its own. So to kind of merge them together.
That was, I mean, it has been excellent. The two teams have meshed really well, both in the office and in the field, that was, you have concerns. You start sticking these supervisors together that, used to be competing and are they going to get on and are they going to work with each other? And it's been awesome so far, but, definitely was, wondering how's this going to go? And same thing, you bring in all these new employees and coworkers, and are they gonna accept me as new management and new leadership, right? So, and
Go ahead.
Well, that's like you get hired as a new head coach halfway through the year.
Absolutely.
In the NFL or NHL, or we were just talking about we were both football fans, and that's got to be one of the toughest jobs in any industry to be a head coach in professional sports, and it's the same thing. Job's essentially the same. You're managing people. You got to get to know them. You got to get to know what they like, what kind of leadership do they respond to, and
absolutely,
you're in a tough spot. You've definitely been through a lot in the last year.
It was a quick change, right? And not only the new people and learning them and getting to know them and their working style, but just the volume as well, right? So you're going from essentially doubling the scope of the business.
With employees, with revenue, with
a lot of moving parts, but it's gone really well so far in the first couple months. There's a lot of fine tuning to do, of course, and getting everybody kind of. One thing right now is we're in 2 offices, so that proves challenging sometimes. But thankfully, with technology and stuff, and we're a stone's throw away from each other, so we kind of cruise up and see them, and then go back down. So
send some paper airplanes.
Exactly. Yeah. Get a telephone with the string going.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit about just the process? Like, at what point? I'm sure there's some rumors going around the office, and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, don't listen to that. And then, I guess this is really happening. And then, you kind of have the meetings with the bosses, the management teams, and telling you what's going to happen. At what point do you make contact with the team, with Justin?
So it was pretty tight-lipped throughout the whole process. The other thing too is until the deal closes, you don't know if it's going to close, right? So, exactly. It's kind of like lukewarm up until a point, and then it's getting close, and then it's getting go. And but even up to the day it's done, you don't know if it's going to go or not, right? And I think that that's felt on both sides. And once the both ownership groups are saying it's a go, then you're really going down and meeting the new employees and moving from there. So.
So what was that like? The first day with
Dan and I, our first meeting was private. So yeah. I didn't have this strange face walking in my office.
I thought you were going to say it's private. We're going to keep it that way.
No, we went for lunch.
Yeah, we went
clarify that there, just to go on.
Yeah, we went for lunch.
Your old stomping grounds, the old triangle, right?
Yeah, not there.
The former server there.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, we had lunch together for our first meeting, and both of us just hit it off right away, and it was great. Yeah, I think on both ends, I can speak for Dan too. We meshed really well.
That's great to see. Yeah, it's great to see anybody in the in the industry or who's involved in business, or see 2 teams come together and it works out. It's like, man, that's awesome. You should think it's awesome, because the chances of it happening are not very good.
And you drive around the city here, and everyone's got a chip on their shoulders. Envirobate employees are walking around thinking we're the best, and then you got Inflector doing the same thing, and then you see each other on a job site and you kind of turn a blind eye. But then as we mesh together, it's all like, let's just make this big super force.
Well, that's the other thing, right?
Of abatement
at one point,
workers.
you guys were competitors for since
absolutely
since you did the Dartmouth General in 2018. So all of a sudden, it's not that long ago that there's a new player on the block, and for these guys, we got another price to.
It's funny, it's cool to kind of peek over the fence, right? So it's like all of a sudden you're thinking of a job you bid that they won, and you're like where are you at on that, or so you're asking, you're kind of flipping
Enemies
back and
become friends.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's been interesting with that.
So who are the competitors, your main competitors now? Or is it as
So I mean, there's a few abatement selective demolition companies, actually quite a few. There's a lot. There's Starfish, there's Volcano.
Okay, now that you're naming them.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them, right? And there's there's lots of ones that would be, equivalent to the Inflector Environmental size pre-merger. There's a lot of those, and then there's a lot of smaller ones too. Like it's a pretty saturated market.
Yeah, so
it
they're
really
gonna have
is.
their niche within the market too, and like I assume,
Yep.
It's going to change with the two companies coming together. Obviously the model now is a little different with it's far-reaching, it's high volume. So it's going to change maybe some of the jobs that you wouldn't have priced before. You can tackle now.
That was one of the strategic things too. Like there is a lot of big projects coming up when you look at the hospital work coming down the pipeline and things like that. And this will position us well to take on those big jobs and then still service the clients that got both of us where we are today, right?
Right.
They have a lot of repeat business, and so do we. And you get on these big projects, and they're flash in the pans, but you got to stick with the people that got you where you were.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was one of the things I get to do on this podcast is ask questions that I think are stupid, but 80% of people might not ask them because they don't have enough courage to ask them, but they're probably thinking the same thing. And,
Okay.
when I was just kind of doing some prep work and going over us sitting down, I was thinking, like, first of all, like, how the hell do you estimate demolition? That's my first. That was my. Because I've got some estimating experience, average skill, but it was just always something I thought, like, and I'm not saying, like, if we got to tear down 100 feet of wall, I'm sure anybody could figure that out. But you get into some of these complex healthcare jobs, and I guess it's like anything else. I mean, anybody can tackle the point count and the linear foot and the square foot and, figure out material, not so much material costs, but, dumping fees and logistics and stuff. But unless you have, maybe more so in this scope, someone who's experienced and been through it, which is the same in a lot of other trades. Mm-hmm. But like, it's you're tearing down, you're not building. So it's really a time sensitive, intuitive thing, and
a lot of risks too. Like we have to deal with dust. Dust is a big thing for demolition, right? Obviously, so there's a lot of contingencies you have to put in to make sure you look after those risks and make sure dust doesn't migrate, water. So you just kind of, like you said, you got to have that experience and know what you're up against, know what's above a ceiling, what's inside of a wall maybe, and just be prepared for everything, really.
Yeah, and we were talking about, anytime any trade's involved in a demo or a reno or retrofit, site visit, is mandatory.
You have to go lay eyes on it.
But not
absolutely.
Like more so, again, in that scope, like what is above the ceiling? Well, and we don't know. We've no idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, it could be newspaper. It
could be extras.
It could be extras.
You think of flooring too, right? Like, you can go take up some sheet vinyl and it peels right up great and off it comes, or you go to peel it and it just ain't going nowhere and it breaks into 1,000 pieces.
It comes up the size of your thumbnail.
Yeah,
exactly. Right?
All of a sudden, that takes 10 times longer to do because you have no idea what's under there. So I just feel like
there's risk in it.
Yeah, a lot of that time
way riskier. Your level of risk in bidding and estimating on something that's got to be the highest of a lot of trades.
A lot of the time it's just a gamble, really. Like with that kind of stuff like Dan speaks on. Like you just don't know sometimes, right? How hard that's going to be down, how hard that hardwood, maybe it's going to be glued down rather than nailed, and more mastic to use for adhesives and another place you bid. So
you might see some of our estimators or other estimators in the demo industry trying to tear something up mid site walk. So,
well, it's like, like that should be permitted if it's not. A lot of things.
Generally not. It'd be, I'm sure it's allowed, but on some, but yeah.
Kind of hard to price though if you can't do that, right? Get away with it when you can.
Get away with it when you can.
Yeah.
It's coming out anyway.
Yeah.
If it happens this week or post tender.
Yeah.
It's an interesting process, and a lot of in abatement as well, right? So abatements are very specialized, and a big component of abatement is the final cleaning, right? So when we leave a room, there's no fibers, there's no dust. We clean it. It's 100% clean.
Right, especially if it's like a mold abatement, job, and you've got to seal everything so it doesn't grow back.
Absolutely, and asbestos too, right? When we go to clear an asbestos zone, the consultants come in with leaf blowers, turn the leaf blowers on and hit the whole room. And if there's any dust and it gets on there,
asbestos is a fibers.
it's a fiber, yeah. So if it gets on any of their pumps, you're coming back and cleaning it, right? And
not good.
You try to
when
think
that
of
happens,
and you try to think like how long does it take you to clean an open web joist or like thousands of feet of it, right? It's involved.
Yeah. Take us through take us through a scenario like of a job, like, you know, you come into a place and you know, I know you don't do the testing in house, right? You're sending that to an engineering
It's
firm.
always third party. Yes.
And is that, you guys kind of price that out, or is there someone you like to work with? Do you develop that relationship, or?
There's a few consultants that we really like to work with.
There's probably not many to choose from that specialize in that, or is there?
There's quite a few around. There's decent, like, you know, your Alltech, Anglo, Pinchin. There's, you know, there's quite a few around, and they're all excellent. Like, you know, it's like all companies, right? You get people you like to work with, and you know, you mesh with certain people and don't mesh with others, and it's like a lot of construction jobs. You know, you get two good project teams and two good superintendents put together, and you don't hear anything from the site, and they get on great, and you get two people that oil and water, and all of a sudden,
and then
you know,
it's
you know, it's
goes
funny.
from being a great experience to just being something else entirely.
Yeah, it can. So. You know, run them through a type 3, Justin.
Yeah, so type 3. So we'll use this room for example, I guess. If we were going to come in and remove the drywall or the plaster, whatever the makeup of the room might be. On the outside of your door, you would set up a 3-stage decon, so which would include a clean room, a shower unit, and a dirty room. Yeah. So then your room then would be put under negative pressure with a negative air unit and filtered through a HEPA filter. Then you would come in, remove all the material, bag that material up into labeled bags. The bags would then be taken out through that same chamber, cleaned off, and put into a second bag, and then disposed of properly. After the removals are complete, you come in and fine clean, as Dan said. Fine clean it all with a fine tooth comb and brushes, HEPA vacuum. And then after that, you get your consultant to come in, make sure everything's clean. Do a agitated air test, which is the leaf blower.
Third party sign off for that.
Yeah. And then
is that just another engineering firm?
So someone like Alltech or Pinchin would come in and do that.
Okay.
They do your agitated air test, make sure there's no fibers in the air. You lock down the area with a. It's just
glue.
It's basically
substance.
it's just basically a light glue
Adhesive.
Yeah, that's clear. So when you put it on, you don't know it's there after we leave.
Right.
And then they run an air test to make sure the air is nice and clean inside, and then you tear everything down. And basically the decon's used for traveling in and out of your work area. So the guys, they enter in with their mask on, power actuated mask with a motor on it. And they put a Tyvek suit on, come in, do the work, and then when they're done their shift, they leave. When they exit, they remove their suit, shower themselves completely, along with the mask as well, and then put their street clothes on back on after that.
I remember the first time I went into type 3, it was like walking into another planet. Like, you know,
you got all these flaps, you're like pushing along.
For any of our listeners who haven't been around a site or haven't been through a hospital that's under renovation, you'd see the tarps and the HAZ tarps and the negative air stuff set up in the hoses and all that. And you might see some guys in white suits, but it looks like, you know, one of those movies about a global virus, right?
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, and then like you said, you're going through all these, you're fighting your way through these flaps, and then you get in and you get the PAPR on, and it's humming along, and you're like, whoa, this is wild.
Yeah, and the health side of things for a company like Inflector, just with the gear alone, right? We're just in that space for so many hazardous materials and respirators and things like that. It's like a lot to
cleaning's essential. Like we clean all of our tools in and out of the jobs. We clean all of our equipment. The bags, the waste gets cleaned. Yeah. The guys wear these disposable suits, Tyvek suits that they take off, right? Like the health and safety aspect of it. They'll do 2 or 3 a day, right? So every time they take a break and come out of the zone, they take that suit off. They shower out. So we set up temporary showers. They take a full shower and leave the zone. They decontaminate. Mm-hmm. And so that'll happen 3-4 times a day depending on the.
So that's
the
another
work,
thing of that's
it's a big cost. It's a big variable cost.
Yeah,
and
variable
detail.
cost. Not only for that, but for the labor side too, right? Because it's not like it's fast moving, free, open, new build. So every time your labor force is on site, it's a slow process.
You get 20 guys in a zone, and they all have to shower out 2 or 3 times a day.
Yeah, your shower allowance on the general hospital
exactly.
there is probably like,
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of shampoo.
A lot of shampoo.
lots of shampoo and,
Lots of suds.
Yeah.
like an estimator pricing out the shampoo.
Yeah.
For the that's interesting. So type 3,
That's pretty much your highest risk level right there.
right?
Yeah.
To differentiate based on the type of material, the quantity and size of material, and often the client. So there's some spots where the regulations would state it can be a type 1 or a type 2, and the client will just say, it's an occupied building. We want to go to the maximum precautions, and you see that a lot with government and provincial and federal buildings. That typically is what happens. So.
And so, your revenue is kind of split between government projects and private as well. I mean, there's obviously relationships with developers or
absolutely. Like
services
there's all that public tender work, and there's also the private tender work, and just a lot of commercial work, but institutional as well. The different universities around and healthcare, and it all manifests itself differently. And then Envirobate in particular had a lot of long-standing relationships where they get the phone call and, hey, we trust you guys. You're fair to us, and please come help us out. We got a job for you. So
and that's another side of your
great.
service too, is the 24-hour thing.
Yes.
Where these whether it's a building maintenance professional that's calling you saying it's a
pipe bursts in a hospital,
Sure.
and in the ceiling they know it's asbestos, or even if it's not asbestos, and they call us out to come take care of it, right? Make it safe for the workers and the people that are using the space.
And a lot of times the building operation is requires that to be that's got to be taken care of immediately, or at least addressed, and it's not like you can wait now, we're busy, we'll be there in a week.
Well, and you think of the Dartmouth General Hospital or any hospital work, there's all those services are running through the space, right? And they're continuing on, and a lot of them are staying live. So, medical gas or something like that is, that's going to an operating room. So it's the level of care that we have to put in when we're doing demolitions and abatement work is extensive, because if we cut that or hit that, then that's, potentially somebody's, health. So you gotta be very detailed.
Yeah, I think healthcare construction is just talked about this many times on the show. It's just a different animal for any contractor, but I feel like a lot of your operations at Inflector or Envirobate for the last 50 years is healthcare the kind of the field that takes up a lot of your services and your revenue for.
I think we excel at it. That's really what it is. Because of the abatement style, whether it's mold, lead, or asbestos, we're used to setting up containments. We're used to isolating our work areas. We control dust, right? So that infection control, which is essentially that same scope, we're really good at it. So we get into these projects, and often we're helping the general contractors or we're helping maintenance people set these up. So that's another big side of our business. Yeah.
Can you, Justin, I know you worked on, I'm sure you drive by, and I think you said you worked on this building where our studio is.
A couple times, yeah.
But, it's Scotia Square, you were there for a few years, and is there any jobs that, you worked on that just kind of, were you're more proud of, or that, I'm not saying that, we want to just go into talking about all the dirty secrets of every building, which is kind of neat, because in your business, it's like, buildings, there's always a backstory and so much history to buildings and their place in the community, and what they meant, and the stories of them being built, and what it's like with tradespeople. You can talk. Remember that job? I mean, how hard it was to get that area done or whatever. And you guys really kind of have an inside look at a lot of the story of the building, right? And so I'm just saying, is there, at Scotia Square, for example, what was that like just to work on that project? It's right here downtown, and are there others that you're just really proud to be part of? Or?
Yeah, Scotia Square was a fun one. That was one of my first big jobs that I was a part of. It's quite a large expansion. We did that project with Maxim, and went off pretty good. There was a lot of unforeseens throughout the project, as for concrete and stuff that had to be removed after exposing some beams. Found out they're completely encased in concrete, so that posed a big task, added task onto the project. So
saw cutting,
a lot of
concrete
saw
is one of
cutting.
your services
Yeah,
too.
that's one of our fortes, and that really tested our limits on that one for sure. There was a lot of specialty concrete to be done on that project, so we brought in some helping hands from that one for that project. Went off pretty good. Another fun one we did was the dentist building, right on the corner of what street is Barrington Street there, and it's right beside the TD Tower.
Okay, yes.
So we actually gutted that building, all the plaster to the inside of it, probably 5 years ago now. And then the building kind of just stood stagnant there for a few years. And then if you drive by now, you see that the back of it's kind of missing. You can see the mural in behind it and everything like that. And we actually partnered up with Dexter's on that one and helped them out. We have a track saw that we mounted to the side of the building and actually separated the face of that building from the rear of it, so they could tear down the remainder of the building. So that was a fun one. It's about 7 stories tall, so have this track saw with a 42-inch blade spinning 80 feet in the air. Was pretty cool to see. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
Wow.
But we did like I said, we've been in almost every building in the city.
Yeah, I mean,
we
you
did
could sit here and tell stories for a couple of days.
Absolutely, yeah. Like the Keith's
Case
Brewery
of
did a
beer.
little bit of work in there. That's fun. And
Right.
the Ralston building, we helped with that one too. That was a big project. A lot of concrete cut in there too, and a lot of asbestos. So.
Yeah.
You get a cool one starting next week too.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, I have
What's coming
I have probably the coolest job I'll ever have in my life. Honestly, we're removing a Quonset hut, which is a steel dome, on Sable Island.
No way.
Yeah, so I got the chance to fly out.
What's it called again?
It's a Quonset hut. So it's basically a steel dome garage, like you've seen in backyards, farmers' lands, and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's just a corrugated steel structure. It's about
Right.
80 feet long,
Yeah.
and it sits on a concrete foundation.
With the kind of web thing
Yeah,
in it?
yeah, exactly.
Is Concept is it a manufacturer or just a style of building?
You know what? I don't know.
Yeah,
that's what the
that's what the job
I know
is
exactly
like.
That's what
you're
it- that's
talking
what it's
about
titled,
now,
that's
because
what
you see
the-
them in the field, as you're driving on the
100%.
highway. or
Exactly.
whatnot,
Yeah,
but-
like the old silos
that's
and
what
stuff.
it
So
is.
what's the
That's what we're
project?
calling
What do
it.
you?
So we have to. There's a lot of lead paint in there, painted on the wood surfaces. So we have to go in and abate all the lead. The interesting factor on this one is the material getting it off the island. So everything is it's going to be palletized on pallets and wrapped to withstand Sable Island's winter until next June, until we can get it off the island. So we have until we start there.
And then how do you get it off the island at that point?
We load it onto a barge. They call
Chopper?
it the. No, I wish. It's onto a barge. They call it their sea lift. So they just load it on there with a skid steer, and we'll bring it back over to here to Dartmouth, retrieve the materials, and then dispose of it properly after that. But
Yeah.
it literally has to sit there wrapped up until June of next year. So
Why?
because there's no more.
Weather?
Yeah,
It's
there's
gotta be done
so
in a certain-
after August they don't send any ships over there. The barge doesn't travel over there anymore, so your only means of access is airplane or a helicopter. So
Picking the crew was fun. We're like, hey, you want to go to Sable Island?
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah. We're like, yeah, it's gonna be like 7 weeks.
yeah, you're staying there till the end of
You're staying
November,
there the whole time.
and you're leaving next Wednesday. So
Yeah.
I got a chance to fly over about two weeks ago now to check the job out. We took
Okay.
our operations
Yeah.
manager Alex with us,
Right.
and we had quite a fun time in the site super. So it was pretty cool. The Parks Canada people, hands down, have the best job in the world. Like it's a very
Just chilling
interesting
in
place,
Sable's Island.
very chill. Like it was like a movie, man. It was very kind of weird to say, but it was like magical. Like you land there and you hear about like Sable Island and all these horses and
Yeah,
everything like
yeah.
that, but it's legit. Like you land and there's just hundreds of horses all around the place, and it's gonna be cool for the guys just to be there and see that and get a job done and have that in their profile. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a pretty cool one. I'm pretty excited. So.
That is really cool, actually. That's like
Yeah.
the best story I've heard on this.
We did
show
one
so
on
far.
George's Island last year.
Yeah,
It was a
there was
big-
fireworks on George's Island last weekend.
That
Did you
was
know that?
no, I didn't.
Totally unannounced.
seen that. Yeah.
Was it
Oh, I looked
was
at
it
it on my
organized?
balcony
Was it
and I was like,
organized or was it just
I don't
somebody
know if
somebody out there?
Well, maybe
I think it was organized.
Maybe,
I think.
maybe there's an abatement crew out there.
Yeah.
Doing a job and they just like get some fireworks.
They know how to set some fireworks off.
Should
so-
do
Oh,
that
yeah.
at Sable's Island.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, yeah, that'll
Anyway,
go over well.
Yeah, real good. Eh? You're not even allowed to go 20 meters up to a horse, let alone set up fireworks.
Definitely not on the gear list.
A lot of fencing on the island, then I assume.
Just within their living quarters. Other than that, everything runs free. Yeah.
Nice.
Leave as you see it. They tell you when you get there, so you're not allowed to take anything, move anything. If you got a dead animal on the side of your doorstep, that's where it stays, I guess. So.
Yeah. Oh, you're saying about George's Island Dam there.
Oh yeah, no, it's a very cool project. Like they put a decent investment into it. They're getting a lot of more engagement with it, and there's tunnels all through it from, it was militarized, and yeah, it was great. And did a project out there, so definitely a flagship project. Lead abatement, mold abatement.
Are they going to do tours over there? Is that their plan?
They were doing them last summer as well.
Okay.
And
I remember seeing a rendering from, I think it was Smarter Spaces, and you could see like under the bowels where the cannons were, and like the aisles and little kind of tunnels and whatnot.
Well, it's like Justin said, it's magical. You get there's these Halifax, Nova Scotia, the Maritimes in general are such a historic place, right? There's a long history here, and you get into a space like that and doing work in a building like that.
During the war.
Exactly, right? You're
what went on.
Imagine yourself marching through, right? Yeah. So, was another cool one. We both did work on.
But I assume that's the cool part about, because every trade is there, like, doing the same scope at the same time. They might be there a year later, like building part of the addition part of the renovation or whatever, but. I see you guys get kind of like the inside look. You get
we're the first ones on site.
The depth of the history of the.
We are always critical path.
Yeah,
critical path on every renovation. Yeah. It's been interesting. We both did a cool project over at Charlottetown Province House.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a big reno, and you guys
we've been ongoing there for I think 2 years now.
And are a lot of your projects like historic properties in that regard?
Not a lot, but again, like I like to think like we both have had good reputations as companies, and coming together, like hopefully that's been very important for us to make sure that continues on. But kind of get trusted to get into some of these delicate situations, and know that we're not gonna go wild. We took the elevator core out of Province House, which is where Canada's conception was signed.
Yes.
And we weren't allowed to cut anything, and it was a wood structure, so we truly had to like take it apart and deconstruct it and pry it apart and crane it all down, and like if there was a recip going, like all hell broke loose on site, right? So very delicate.
It's right there at Confederation. Yeah, that's such a cool story.
And that building's got a cool feel to it as well. Absolutely, when you walk in there, you're kind of like, ooh.
Yeah. Charlottetown, that's where it all began.
That's where it all began.
And so the head office for Inflector is in Ottawa.
Yes.
And there's 5 different locations now, including Atlantic Canada. Where are the other offices in the Western provinces?
Alberta, we have an office. It's up in Edmonton, and Toronto. It's an office there, and that's the big part of our market. That's Toronto's it's a lot of work there. Yeah. And Kingston.
Pretty condensed market there.
Pretty condensed market. Yeah, we did a very large project there, demo and abatement on McDonald Block, which is their provincial legislator buildings. It was four massive towers. So I think it was the biggest, definitely the biggest one ever in Canada, done by a company, and I think it would be close for North America.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading something on the news portion of your online presence. Some project that involved like 5 million square feet of several different buildings in a street block. I'm not sure if that was something done a long time ago, or that must be it.
That's the one.
Yeah. That's insane.
It's I walked it when I first came on, and just being in one building, and multiply that by 4, the size and scope and effort and planning that went into that was extensive.
Task of like how do you bid something?
A lot of work done in Parliament Hill as well, on Center Block, East Block, and
lots of neat stories. Yeah, for sure. So tell us, with abatement, we talked about asbestos. Mold is an item. Lead. What about other things that maybe wouldn't come to mind so much for people that require, abatement, and what's it like when it comes to lead? What's that process like? Is it the same? Is there different? Where it comes to removal from site and then dumping, and where those products need to be, disposed of, and logistics and things. Like, maybe just talk a little bit about that kind of back end of things once it's out of the building.
Yeah, I mean, setup for the abatement is generally similar across the different designated materials, mold, asbestos, lead. The removal methods are really product specific and depends what you get into. Disposal requirements on lead is pretty intense. The lead has to go all the way to Montreal to get disposed of properly. That's the closest facility. So it's a significant cost of that.
Where's it going from there? Do you know?
That's a destruction facility. So I don't know what sort of process they refine it and turn it back into a raw material. And
so they're taking it out of its.
That's its final resting place when it gets there, is my understanding, and it might go back into other products. I'm not sure. Are you aware of that?
Oh, I think you're correct. Yeah.
And then I remember being involved in a project as a contractor on. It's a hotel in the hotels in Dartmouth, and just an amazing amount of I won't name the hotel, but just a lot of added work because of unaware that there wasn't asbestos, but there was a ton of mold and a lot of floors that were priced out for just construction of maybe a new closet wall and a new
mold's a tough one, right?
If it's there, it's probably over there, and it's probably up on that floor too, and then end up being a totally different project.
Absolutely.
Where prior, now whether or not there was enough testing done prior, or if you're opening up one floor and assuming the other 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 are good, but regardless of that, it was just a neat thing to be involved in from that perspective, knowing that. They had, and you guys might have, Envirobate was probably there. I can't remember. This is a long time ago, but it was like a whole year of just tearing stuff out in the back. And
it's one thing to
everywhere.
I think I know what you're talking about, but I'm not going to name names either.
Just for the sake that it's this media company. So I'm not gonna say it.
It's one thing to visually get rid of mold. It's another thing to have it cleared, right? And it's cleared through tape tests. So they'll actually go into a surface, stick the tape, pull it off, put it under a microscope, and then they'll read what's there, right? So again, it's one thing to visually get rid of it. It's another thing to clear it and bring the building back to health. So it's a lot of cleaning.
Yeah. And so for just for those kind of things, like is it constant, and maybe not so much for public tender jobs. I think that's kind of a given, but if it's a private project, like you're documenting the whole process, if you're dealing with materials that are really serious to people's health. I mean, mold is one thing, but asbestos is another, and lead and different. Like, they have their health repercussions, and there might be a private. Like, are you documenting those things with certain bodies of governance?
We have our own processes in place for documentation, and then the clearances that we do are by a third-party testing agency. So when we're done our job, we'll call in a third party to validate, like, yes, you've done your job, and we agree that it is. It's finished.
Yeah, I imagine there's a lot of insurance in in this business. Just especially when you're talking about projects like the ones that are local. I mean, the General Hospital. Like, these are huge jobs locally, and then you get into some of the stuff you're talking about in Toronto, where it's just like.
Yeah, we interface with the public a lot, right? And we're removing hazardous materials, and we get under the focus as to and we want to validate, number one. Too, the other thing too is like. All these tradespeople coming behind us, like it's very important to us as a company that we've done our job and done it properly, because those might be my buddies going in or his family going in afterwards and going in and working after us, right? So we these people trust us to do the job properly and make sure, and from all the way to tradespeople to the homeowner to the end user, a teacher going back into a classroom or something, right? So,
and to elaborate too on the whole testing part of it too, like in a high profile public area, we can perform, the third party will perform testing, air monitoring while we're working as well, just to keep everyone at peace of mind, that is outside of our work area.
Yeah.
So let's say you take on half of a school or something, not that you really do work in a school during a school year, but or a hospital, let's say, you take out a quarter of this hospital and you're doing the work inside of it. There's often monitoring going on all the time while you're working and making sure everyone on the outside is keeping safe too.
Right.
It's interesting. Like, it's building to building, client to client, there's a lot of variance in how, there's Nova Scotia doesn't actually have a regulation. We have a code of practice. And, for us, as a company, it would be great to have them come in and formalize the regulations. And
as the province.
As the province, right?
Not the building code.
Not the building code, yeah.
Right.
So, province to province, it changes,
Right.
What expectations. So, federally, there's a standard, and that spans the provinces. And, provincially, when you get on a provincial job, they're very involved, and, everything's, watched very closely and followed up on. But there's a lot of pressure when you get into the private industry to cut costs and do things like that, right? So we've always talked about if they really put in a regulation and really got
just
into
to
the
keep
enforcement,
people honest with the process.
Keep people honest with the process,
like anything,
right?
Like anything, you have to have a referee. You can't play a good game of hockey without one.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, eliminate the shortcuts that may happen in the field, right, or in the industry.
What about soil and site remediation? Did we talk about that? Yeah.
No. So as a company, we do it here locally. We don't self-perform it hands-on.
Right. Okay.
We do partner with a lot of really good companies that do self-perform it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the structural demolition people that we partner with, they'll do that, and so we get a lot of the calls because it's been off and in our sphere. So,
but is emergency response in house?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So that's a big.
The emergency response is in house, correct.
And is that something that you? I mean, obviously you have certain clients, and and Environment would have their relationships, and now these are all under one roof together. But is it a lot of times when you're involved in something on the construction phase that you're talking to the building maintenance guy on the same job, further down the road, when there are things that need attention? And
absolutely.
So if you're involved in a project in the construction phase, probably post-construction operation of the building, you're there too, right? You're kind of wrapping your arms around them most of the time.
Making life easy for them and keeping their building operational.
Right.
It's very important because we get in there and do a job and it goes smooth and there's no hiccups, then they're going to want you back when they need some work done. And you've definitely experienced that.
Yeah. Yeah, we work for a lot of maintenance in buildings throughout the whole city. So
so
that's where the calls come from, right?
St. Mary's, Dalhousie campus. You're involved there. You probably get 100 calls from there.
Yeah. Even developers too. A lot of developers call. From being an Envirobate, we get a lot of developers just calling Envirobate for their expertise, right? And that's just grown through relations over the years.
Sure they would.
It's a lot of grassroots calls because it's the maintenance person, the boots on the ground that's making that call. It's not often going up the management line that might be at my level. So if they like the people that they had on site, then they're going to want those people back, and that's when we get the calls. So.
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing. You've got to have likable people.
Yeah,
I mean they got to be competent. It's just too fast paced and too much money at stake for competency levels got to be there, no question. But if you don't have, it's a small place too, right? I mean, Halifax is growing, but still, an industry like this,
Maritimes is still the Maritimes.
If you're not a very pleasant person to work with, it's not gonna stay secret too long.
I think that was
a big part of company's success.
Yeah, it was.
Gotta have likable people.
That was one of the barriers that we pushed through too, because it was the Ontario company coming into the Maritimes, right? That's a thing.
Oh, sure, that'd be a thing.
And most of our people are all from here and grew up here, and I think when I walked in the studio, I knew a bunch of the guys here right away and made some connections, right? So
but you know what? I grew up in Prince Edward Island. That's where I'm from. In the western part, and there's always, you're in high school, you're growing up. What part of the province you're from, right? I mean, it's comical, but it's real, and that is no different. Just a little bigger scale, but it blows over, lasts for a little while, and then it's just kind of it's a phase, and then big deal. It's but that's true. I think a lot of contractors here will feel a certain way when they hear, somebody from Ontario's bidding this job. We don't want them coming in here getting the work, and they've had bad experiences. Because sometimes, people from central Canada can, not appreciate the smaller market as much, right? Because it's smaller. It's not as big, maybe. It's not as fast-paced. depending on whatever your attitude is toward it. But you know, I've had those experiences myself. You're working with maybe a GC from, you know, it doesn't do a lot of work out here, and just, you know, not as much respect. It's not home for them. It's a smaller place. Probably maybe the job doesn't mean as much. You know, they're not going to be here for the next 5 years or 10 years. They're not going to see you. You know, so it's not like they have any motivation, ulterior motive to, like, you know, continue a good relationship. You're just, but it's an interesting topic to drill into, because it's always there, you know, on a lot of jobs.
I find, like, moving from province to province and region to region too, like, it's all the work gets packaged and executed a little differently, right? So there's different mentalities how that pushes together. And I noticed that moving from Saskatchewan to Halifax, even just how demolition and abatement get packaged together, like in Ontario as well, it's two completely different scopes. Whereas here, it's all packaged in as one scope when you're talking tendered and commercial construction.
And that happens on a lot of different scopes.
A lot of different scopes,
you know, whether or not they're going to break out certain ceiling scopes from the interiors, and you know, it's so there's reasons for that, right? There's motives for that. It reminds me of this. What's the book? Outliers, I think, by Malcolm Gladwell. And he talks about, you know, what's a good way to offend young men? You know, make fun of where they're from. But there's a reason, right? Because where you grew up, like, always has, there's always something about where you grew up that puts a barrier on what you're able to accomplish in your life. Like, if you grew up here, chances are you're not going to be able to do this. It's real. Like, some people transcend it, but, like, that's why where you're from has such a, I mean, there's lots of reasons, but, like, a lot of times that's a big thing. Where you're from, like, in, you know, even if you were to go out to Central Canada maybe to do a job for the first time when you tried to do one, you know, a lot of the problems that could arise on that site, not necessarily from the tender process or how tight you were with could just be like the attitude of the different cultures or where different people are from. So I just find that interesting, how different people react, who's more, you know, just a little too uptight about, you know, who's more open to, and what the attitude is from, you know, it's not like you can't define a person. Not everybody. It's easy to get stereotypical, but it is a real thing, and there's reasons for it, like in your human nature, like, and you see it a lot in construction.
Oh yeah,
you see it all the time, even between the provinces. I mean, I helped grow a business here, for several years.
You'd have been the outsider coming in,
and you better believe I was.
Yeah,
it's not very fun.
100%.
You know, it's just. But then, you know, things change a little bit, and your you know, pretenses and your fear and things, you know, and then things that seem like a big deal aren't. But man, when you're in it, it's a real thing. You're seeing through that lens, and you're not. That's the lens you're seeing through until
it's got to be one job at a time, one relationship at a time, and you know, you get that positive momentum and keep going, and then you know, partnering with a local company with a great reputation, I think is gonna really help and solidify us with that. I think, you know. Right.
I mean, that's definitely a tactical move from the higher end of things, but but it's more stressful to do your job when you have those layers of, you know, emotional and psychological stuff going on. Like, you know, it's hard enough to do your job as a project manager. You know, it's tough, but then when there's other stuff added to it, like, you know, being the new guy or being it's tough. So Justin, maybe you could tell us a little bit about some of the specialties. I think it's with your scope of work, you know, some of the gear, some of the technological advancements that might, you know, make your projects go better, easier, some of the things that you're able to do at Inflector and, you know, formerly Envirobate, now that you're merged together, that, you know, other companies can, or just a little bit on the specialty side.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, Envirobate purchased a few pieces of gear that were a little bigger than anything that's been around. So we did, one of the items was a 32-inch floor grinder. So we can come in with a 32-inch based floor grinder and polish a concrete floor for floor prep. So that's removing the adhesives off the floor. So we can get, you know, upwards to around 2,000 to 3,000 square feet refinished in a shift, in a 10-hour shift. So it's come a long way from being on your hands and knees with a 7-inch hand grinder, kind of buffing the floor away. So
you ask any
That's the
GC2
grandfathers wish they had that one.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
back in
Like
the
it's a pretty big deal when it comes to labor force. They definitely smile when that comes on site.
Well, and any GC, like scope gap wise, it's floor prep, right? So for us to have that service, I think it's a great move.
Yeah, so we can go into a 30,000 square foot space and not only do the demo, but have the floor prepped, ready for the rebuild all around. So
Ready for the new substrate or whatever's going on that.
Yeah, so then you got every single trade moves in at once, and we're out of your hair, and you're not getting other contractors in to try to do stuff we couldn't do and everything.
Yeah, I can't imagine like the first time you do one like that, or you're used to like the last 20 years doing it otherwise. It's just
and I've been the guy on his hands and knees.
I don't know. Like, I'm sure you'd be like amazed and you're so happy, but in a way you'd be kind of like, I just spent 20 years doing
exactly.
this like
Our guys
the
see
old way.
Our guys see the new machine come in and they're like, wait, we've been doing this the whole time, and then this thing was
like
over there.
The lasers from Plumb Bobs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's right. I still like a Plumb Bob myself.
Yeah, actually, that's maybe a bad analogy because Plumb Bobs are probably still better than some lasers.
Another item that we got was a concrete track saw. So it's made by Husqvarna, and it's basically fully Bluetooth. So you plug some power into it. It's big power, around 600 volts, but you basically have this track that mounts on the wall or floor or ceiling, basically whatever you want to cut. We can cut up to 24 inches thick, and the guy can stand upwards to around, if I remember correctly, like 100 feet away from this saw. And the remote control just sits there on a harness over your shoulders, and it's like playing a video game, and you go buck wild cutting concrete. So it's pretty cool.
That's cool, man.
Yeah. And
bet you wish you had that down at the Scotia Square.
Yeah, that's kind of what made us purchase it.
You go through with something like that, and then you think, like, maybe it's worth the investment.
Absolutely. That's where I was kind of mentioning that we got some other trades in to help us out with that specialty concrete stuff, and that's where we learned, like, we got to step it up here a little bit. So we were always into the floor cutting portion of concrete. So you got to walk behind saw that's cutting about 8 inches of concrete, but then at Scotia Square we realized there's a lot of these concrete upstands that were 14 inches thick of concrete, 6 feet tall, and we had about 120 feet of it or something to cut, right? So we had to bring someone in with that gear to help us on that project, and then we said, why don't we just buy our own, because just dabble into it a little more, right? We're already doing concrete cutting, so we're not really taking work from anybody. We're just adding more options to the industry, right?
Sure.
So, and then another cool one was we got a fully electronic robot. So it's made by Husqvarna as well, fully Bluetooth.
Does it talk?
It doesn't talk. I wish. It makes a lot of cool noises, but again, you can stand like 100 feet away from this thing.
What's it for? Tell us, like.
So it's an excavator. So it's fully robotic, as in like electronic and remote control.
We'll have to throw up a clip here on one of the sound bites here for what you're talking about. But.
Again, like you stand 100 feet away from it, you got this controller in front of you that tells you everything about it. How much power it's getting, how much power it's putting out, what each piece of equipment that you have on it is, how is it performing. It's self-maintenanced as well, so it's pretty cool. So the ideal task for it, we bought it basically to crush up this old bank safe that was at Maritime Center right up the street here. So we got into this project, and there's this giant vault. And
so is it because you have to dismantle it or crush it before it can leave the site because it's the size of it?
Well, the vault was made of pure concrete, so it's 16-inch walls, all concrete with there was 6 or 8 mats of rebar inside this concrete.
The walls of the vault itself. Right?
Yeah, and the ceiling. So it's a concrete box, basically like a bomb shelter, sitting on the second floor of Merritt.
Hitler's bunker.
Yeah, exactly. So.
What bank? What bank was there?
I don't know if there was a bank or if it was just for, some people use old vaults for storage. You see them in Canada Post buildings and stuff like that too. So.
That's a pretty serious vault, though.
Yeah, it was very serious. So we got this thing in. The guys from Husqvarna flew down from Ontario and gave us a crash course. We put our boys on it. We were 2 or 3 weeks on it with 4 guys, and we got this chunk out, maybe 8 feet long by 4 feet high.
8 feet by 4 feet in 3 weeks.
Yeah, in about 3 weeks with a bunch of guys with jackhammers. And this thing was about 20 feet long by 12 feet deep and about 10 feet high. And after the robot showed up, we had that thing demolished and out the door in about 7 shifts. So
like, what would it look like leaving out the door in like 10 different pieces, or just like the walls taken apart?
Fully intact. So, the vault itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, just crumbled. Just crumbled concrete debris.
It's got a hammer. It's got a hammer.
So we got a jackhammer on it. And then we also have a pulverizer on it as well. So the pulverizer actually has 40-ton crushing capacity to it. So you just put the concrete in the middle of that, and it crushes it to pieces. And then you just put the debris in a wheelbarrow and wheel it out to the truck. So yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool purchase, and especially to get there and run it. And then we did a couple more up in New Brunswick. Same thing, like, crushing vaults out of these buildings in days instead of weeks or months, right?
Crushing vaults and crushing
vaults.
That's right.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool machine. Like, you'll have to check it out. Like, you can look it up on YouTube and stuff.
Cool,
the Husqvarna electronic robot. So.
The great thing about
a vault has always got to be something that, if we're doing a bank, because there's always going to be a vault that's got to be dismantled or able to be removed, and it's like you can't take it out in one piece.
Elevator shafts too.
Elevator shafts, and like a lot of the time with the vaults too is like there's no one really that can go in and bust this thing out in a timely manner to get the the building back up and running. So a lot of the times you see them just turn it into an office or something, right? And they just clad the inside of it with some drywall
to
shove somebody in this
eliminate
dark room.
the need to remove it.
The loudest person in the office goes in there.
My office in the vault. Come on in.
Don't lock the door behind you.
The other interesting about it too is where it's all electric. You can bring in mini X's, but they're all diesel, right? So they're choking diesel out, and so this comes in and it's just straight electric. So there's no off gassing to it. So you can bring it into an occupied building, and it might be a little loud, so you're going to probably do it at night. But
when you're jackhammering.
When you're jackhammering,
there's not much you can do about the noise on that.
No, not at all. That's the unfortunate part of demo. You're always on night shift. So.
Yeah. Well, there's another good point. I mean, that's a big part of your business too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how much of your work is carried out on night shift, would you say? Half?
I'd say probably 50%, really. Like, you get into doing some grocery stores.
I'm never going to be working for Inflector.
As little as possible.
People, like, my biological clock just won't do that. I mean, I've worked night shift stuff before, but I could never adjust.
That's the good thing about a lot of our guys. They're just so used to it.
Do the guys that work most of the night shift, do they just kind of consistently stay on it, or are you constantly switching them back and forth?
Our crew is so versatile that honestly they just jump into whatever
they're
asked to do.
It's not a big deal to them. It's not
at all.
Yeah.
No, they'll
and
do
if it
3
was,
months.
They wouldn't be working there.
Exactly. They'll do 3 months of night shift and then jump back on days, and then a month later they're asked to go back on nights.
Actually, I don't really sleep anymore anyway, so maybe I'll be better at it now than I used to be.
That was one thing that, like, coming from the GC world to the subtrade world, I wasn't so sure about, working with the demo workers. They could reputation mean the rough and tumble, but like that was my favorite. That's my favorite part. I love the guys. Like, I love the people we work with. They're so fun and interesting, and just show up and just go at it every day. Right?
And it's hard work, right? You kind of got to show up like you're showing up to football.
They're tough people.
A football game or practice, and
it's not like
awesome.
The demo kind of gets a bad reputation too, I find. You get the demo guys are rough. They're bringing sledgehammers in to rip and tear this place out. But like Dan mentioned about that elevator, like you gotta study how these things are put together to know how to take them apart in a proper and safe manner, right? So
it's deconstruction. It's deconstruction. It's not.
You're not just running. It might appear to people that you're just just knocking walls over and stuff, but like. Yeah, it's more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to be a jack of all trades, really. Like, you got to know a little bit of every trade to make sure you're not messing other things up, right?
My favorite is, you get the new person on site and they go a little wild and beat a wall down and they're all pumped up. And it's
it feels
right
pretty
on.
good.
It's like, okay, clean it up now, right? So it's like, whereas if they took it apart in the right manner, it's not a major mess, right? So that's one of the first learning hurdles when you get new people learning the trade.
Yeah, you see the home reno shows on,
running through the wall.
Running through the walls, and people taking sledgehammers to countertops in people's kitchens and stuff. That's not how we do things. No. So.
Yeah, no, that's almost comical, right? It's, But it's always good to get that insight. It brings more respect to the trades. We were talking to some of our subs that were on. I mean, we've had landscaping companies, we've had, painting companies, cladding companies, and people have assumptions. Even if you're in architectural, like drywall or painting, like there's probably some kind of, whether it's a true or false hierarchy. It's like, well, you're maybe a glorified laborer if you're doing this kind of task, but there's always more to it than that. And you think you can do things and go try and do it on your own home reno, and you're just going to make a mess of it.
We're the only
sub
sub-trade that touches every scope.
Yeah.
Right. So we deconstruct roofs, siding, mechanical, electrical, concrete, drywall, ceilings, like flooring. Everything that goes into that building, we remove, right? Or we at some phase or point on different jobs. So, not a lot of sub-trades or companies in general can say that they touch every aspect of a building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is one of the funnest parts, one of the most interesting, enjoyable parts of doing what we're doing here at Atlantic Construction Podcast. You get so many different perspectives. The insight that it takes to produce a new building. It's just the knowledge and experience. It's like we're all prideful and we like to point at the things we've done, but like one of the things I've realized is like, man, I really didn't really know that much at all. I knew nothing. Unless you think of like all these different people with different backgrounds and it's just like so much, it's really, really insightful. It's really humbling.
I had a prof or a teacher at NSCC, and when we finished the course, and it's kind of everyone's last day, it's a big clean whiteboard, and he put a little dot on it, and he said, this whiteboard's the construction industry, and what is that little dot. Yeah. And he kind of said, go fill your whiteboard, and what you're speaking about,
exactly.
It's and when it's funny when you're working for the GC too, you kind of think that you know enough to be dangerous
when you're on that end.
But then when you get into it, and I got into this, it's like, wow, I didn't realize how detailed and thought out it needs to be to when you're the person doing that work. Yeah,
and hopefully some of that will spill out to listeners that are in the industry to maybe next time on that site up the hill or over in New Brunswick, like before you start bashing your demo crew or the
flooring
trades guys, for all the trades, like maybe you don't know quite as much, and maybe this is why it takes that long. And just pause before you have that little convo in the morning after. It's really neat. So where do you guys see? And this question might be for both of you, Justin and Dan, or maybe more for you, Dan, or Justin, feel free. But where are things kind of headed, as far as down the pipeline, and where, with the market the way it is in Atlantic Canada, this recent acquisition, and now you're off and rolling, and so how do the next few years look, and what?
I mean, the immediate, the biggest thing for the first goal is to get the two companies truly merged together and gelled together, and make sure that the clients that Envirobate's been servicing and taking care of for all these years are definitely met. Same thing with our our repeat clients, that before we start really going out and chasing new people. It's something I always say is like, it's I could go out and try to find a new client or knock on the door of a university, but if we don't have the resources to go and
right
take
in front
that,
of you,
right in front of you to take that on, then you build that relationship only to fall on your face when you do the job.
And
right?
you just took on how many different relationships with Envirobates,
exactly, right,
and great relationships, I'm sure.
They are, and so it's back to that grassroots, right? Making sure that we have that solidified, and the pipeline for Atlantic Canada is great. You look at New Brunswick, PEI, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland. All these hospitals were built in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Same thing with the schools, and they're coming towards their end of the life, and
they're coming to that critical life cycle.
They are, and they're either being renovated or brought down to make room for new. So our market is there, and we're well positioned to service it with the especially with this merger, right? And we got on a lot of that specialized gear that Justin was talking about, and we've got a great labor force, which I was talking about earlier. Love the guys, I love the people.
How many site guys would you say are on the labor force right now on the team?
We're well up over 100.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And then it's 10 or 12 project managers there, different.
Yeah, not quite that many, but we're getting up there.
But it takes a few to manage that volume. That volume of crew that are
absolutely.
What about the governance? You mentioned the governance earlier in the province of Nova Scotia being a little bit different in every province, and how important that is to you guys for the private jobs and different stuff like that. Seems like that's kind of a are you hoping to see some changes or some improvements?
If there was an overall regulation issued in Nova Scotia, it would be beneficial to everybody in the industry.
Right.
And then of course the enforcement that goes along with it. We feel like that would benefit us as a company. We do what we need to do to do the job properly, and often we go above and beyond what's stipulated. There's a lot of what's in the regulations is there, and it's excellent. But it's just the consistency.
Is there action that you can take, or that you are taking, or that you'd like to further that cause for you and for other people? Is there with the association, with the board?
I think federally and provincially, it's in motion, and you see it improved upon all the time. And really what they've done is they've adopted other regulations, so it's there, but it's not there.
I'm sure that's something that you're talking about when you're talking to your boss and CEO in Ottawa, and what it's like in Alberta. It's probably different. It's much different there as it is.
Yeah, and I mean it could be as simple as raising the standards for training for the worker, right? So they could implement the requirement that the workers have X period of training, and that's just going to standardize that across the industry, and a lot of provinces have done that. And that's just going to build up the competency of the tradespeople and the performance of the work. So
sure. And we didn't really touch on training, but other than WMIS and first aid and your typical trades training that any contractor needs to have for commercial, industrial, institutional jobs and stuff, is everybody that works for Inflector, is there asbestos courses that need to be completed? Different ones. I assume there's a lot more credentials and things that are needed, and, specialty courses.
The minimum standard is awareness, and as a company, we've 3-day trained all of our people, and we're getting in the process of getting all the Envirobate people and making sure that everybody's got that 3-day training course, and they're put on by the third-party consultants. So And we have the capabilities to do it in-house as well. So,
and that just in-house training is something
and it runs you through the products, the hazardous materials you encounter, how to shower and shower out properly, how to build a proper containment. Just basically all the fail safes that are in place.
Any final thoughts, Justin?
I don't know. I think we touched on pretty much everything.
No, we did. Great conversation. It's really it's really been really enjoyable to kind of sit and reminisce on some projects and talk about the exciting acquisition and the two companies coming together, and it's like-minded people in the industry and some great stories, and this has been a really good sit down and really good conversation, and thank you guys for doing this and for coming on and sharing this, and hopefully we can have, whether it's people tuning in that are maybe unaware of what it's like to work at a company like this, that maybe will reach out if they're looking for, because I'm sure there's lots of hiring happening with every contractor, so you could probably use the man on the site.
Lots of
absolutely.
So that's one thing, and just to get some insight into the different services in abatement and demo, and it's been very insightful. So thanks for doing this, Justin and Dan. It's been awesome.
I appreciate it. No problem. Yeah.
It's awesome. Thank you very much.
Cheers. This episode is brought to you by Cook Insurance, your trusted insurance broker in Atlantic, Canada for 50 years. Insurance is complex, and the Cook team focuses on delivering comprehensive solutions for your construction needs, including builder's risk, wrap-up liability, performance bonds, and project-specific construction. A Navicord partner since 2020, Cook is one of the largest construction brokers in Canada and offers national strength with a local touch. Whatever your insurance needs are, Cook has you covered. We would like to take this time to thank a longtime sponsor of our media platform, FCA Surety. The brokers at FCA Surety are experts in all surety bonding categories and provide unparalleled service during the bonding process. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Atlantic Construction Podcast. Be sure to follow us on any podcast platform you use. You can also find us on LinkedIn and Instagram at Atlantic Construction Podcast. Be sure to send us a comment or a review. We'd love to engage with you.